What's going on, guys? Andrew Piluk Hockey here, back again with another video. Now, you guys are probably seeing the title and thinking, good God, we already know about this, but I want to give my thoughts on it, and I'm sure you guys want to sound off in the comments right now anyway. So if you guys are new here, make sure to like this video and subscribe. I know there's a ton of you guys that are watching that aren't subscribed. If you don't want to, that's fine. But if you enjoy the content, please click like. It does help me, and it's completely free to help me that way, so I'd greatly appreciate it. But we're going to be talking about the Maple Leafs, of course, the team that we love so much, and sometimes that we hate so much. But in this circumstance, it's a little bit crazy that we have to talk about this, and it's the core four. Now, we're talking Matthews, Marner, Nylander, Tavares. Now, there's a lot of people that would include Morgan Riley in that to make it like the core five. I think that that's fair, but when we're talking about the core four, we're talking about the big boys up front in the top six. The first-line caliber players, all four of them, and the reports that have been coming out. Now, what we all thought was that if the Maple Leafs didn't at least win a round this year, that they would be traded. Now, they won a round, but they went out in embarrassing fashion in the second. And they were pretty much nowhere to be found. So you have to talk about getting rid of those guys. But once Kyle Dubas was let go by the Maple Leafs and Jason Spezza quit, Brendan Shanahan has basically, apparently, called the core four players to tell them that the organization has no intention of trading them, regardless of who is named as the next GM. And this was on the Chris Johnston show on the Steve Dangle podcast network. So SDPN, make sure to go check out those guys. I'm sure if you watch my videos, you watch theirs. But Chris Johnston was talking about this. Now, let me just give you guys a little bit of a heads up. The information that's been coming out lately has basically been saying that any trade that Kyle Dubas had to make, that he had to go through Brendan Shanahan and the board. So it seems as though that even though whoever is the Leafs GM at the time, they're not necessarily fully the GM. Because it looks like Brendan Shanahan is the guy really calling the shots here. So this is why I told you guys when I was talking about Kyle Dubas that we need to also give Brendan Shanahan some of the credit here when it comes to a lot of the moves that are being made, because he has the ultimate say and apparently has nixed several trades that Kyle Dubas has tried to make. And that comes from him and Rogers. Apparently both of them have made some moves, or said not to make some moves that have obviously not happened. But when it comes to the core four, it seems as though Shanahan's not ready to let go of those guys. And as a fan who's connected to the players, of course you want to see those guys come back and play, just because I like those guys. And you're just hoping that you bring in somebody else and the team just starts to work. But as somebody that's a realist, that's looking at this big picture, they have to remove one of those guys in order to be better. Unless they can have, by some miracle, can make this team substantially better and bring in somebody, a star caliber player that plays the way that they, the physicality and everything like that, and they just somehow become a better team, which is very possible. Now, I can't believe I'm even saying this, because I was kind of just like in love with the fact that the Leafs were going to make a big change. Sorry for my hair. I look like ridiculous right now, but I was okay with the fact that they were going to make a big trade and probably remove one of the core four, most likely one of Nylander or Marner, because Matthews, they're going to try to re-sign as soon as possible, and Tavares has the no movement clause. But it looks like the Leafs organization has different plans. Now, another organization that we need to talk about here is the Florida Panthers, and that's the team that we've been compared to recently because of what Kachuk and all these other guys have been doing, right? So people think the Panthers are a miracle team. I'm here to tell you that that's not the case. They're a fantastic hockey team that underperformed for most of this season. And sure, they were the underdog going into the playoffs, but this team finally refound their potential because they were a President's Trophy team the season prior. Like, you can't ignore the fact that this team just fell off a cliff. So they started to realize their potential, and they traded Huberdeau last offseason in order to get Matthew Tkachuk. So that trade looked really good for Calgary, but ended up being really good for Florida because Tkachuk really found his full game with Florida, like to the next level. He was already good in Calgary, but he found it to the next level. So when a lot of people are comparing the Leafs and the Panthers, you have to understand this Panthers team was very, very good. They fell off a cliff for most of the season and then finally found that potential, and they all started clicking, and it looked really good. They were only in the playoffs for 28% of this season. And now look at them, right? They look fantastic, and this is what they're supposed to be playing like. Like Florida next year, if they don't win the Cup this year, they should be the favorites to win next year because they're probably going to be adding, right? This team looks very, very, very scary. They found their potential. So when people are going, oh, but look what Florida and Calgary, look at that trade they made. Sure, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But these star-for-star trades, especially for what people are trying to get back in these trades, are very difficult to make. Now, we're going to look at some stats here. We're going to look at the numbers and whatever, but I wanted to start off with that because it's going to be very difficult to win one of these trades. There's a bunch of like ridiculous trade rumors out there, stuff that doesn't make sense. I've made it very clear that I think if the Leafs were to make that move, you probably get the most back for Mitch Marner. You probably get a decent return for William Nylander, but you probably get the most back for Marner. I think that if you go to teams like, a Philly, and you can get a Konechny plus, like you still have to get a big package around that guy. If you go to Nashville and you ask for UC Saros, the starting goaltender, like what else do you get there? Like, a lot of people are saying, oh, just get Tom Wilson. Tom Wilson is not Tom Wilson as he was before. Like, he's not the same Tom Wilson. So it's like, that doesn't make sense. Like, you can sign a couple guys in free agency right now that will give you that grit without having to trade somebody. But I'm not necessarily saying that the Leafs shouldn't trade one of these core four guys to potentially just get back a few pieces that you can sprinkle in the top six and potentially a net that will make this team better as a whole, and then go out there and sign a guy like Tyler Bertuzzi for that grit and that scoring touch, right? So there's a lot of different things here, and I'm sure we'll make individual videos for each player because we've got a long off season here, so there's going to be a lot of time to talk about it. But it's going to be very difficult. Now, the big thing and the reason why fans are so pissed off with these guys is we're going to look at their playoff numbers, right? So, of course, in the regular season, we don't even need to look there. They're always tearing it up in the regular season. But in the playoffs, in the 16-17 season, where that team finally got there, 5 points for Matthews, 4 for Nylander, 4 for Marner. And this was before they had Tavares. So, not even a point per game in the 16-17, and you need these guys to obviously play better than that. Then you get to the 17-18 season. Marner was fantastic, 9 points in 7 games. And then you go down the list, 4 points in 7 for Nylander, which isn't that good. And then Austin Matthews, 2 points in 7 games. Definitely not where you want your leaders to be, right? Then you go to the 18-19 season. This is when they finally have Tavares. Matthews was 6 and 7. Tavares with 5 and 7. Marner with 4 and 7, Nylander with 3 and 7. So, again, these guys are not even getting a point per game. Matthews was pretty good because he had 5 goals. Like, at least he had that scoring touch, right? 19-20. We have 6 and 5 for Matthews, so again, a pretty decent one there. 4 and 5 for Nylander, 4 and 5 for Marner, and 3 and 5 for Tavares. So again, like, we're seeing a pattern here, right? Like, they're going back and forth with who's performing. And then this one was like a really telling one, right? Nylander with 8 and 7, Matthews with 5 and 7, Marner with 4 and 7. And it's like, and of course, like, we're not going to be talking about Tavares because that was the one where he got injured. the scary injury there, so we don't want to talk about that. Then again, see, back and forth again. 9-7 games, 8-7, 7-7. So they really performed. 6-7. So their top guys were really performing in this series, but not enough, right? 22-23. We'll go to this year. We got Marner with 14 points in 11 games, Riley with 12-11, Matthews with 11-11, Nylander with 10-11, and then Tavares with 8-11. So they're like going back and forth with like who's performing the best and who's actually showing up. But when you look at contending teams and you look at their best players, a lot of the time those guys are putting up like significant numbers. Like Draisaitl, all these guys are scoring like 8 goals. Like you need your top players to really excel when it comes to that time of the year. And Marner was pretty good this year. Matthews and Nylander were right there as well. Tavares didn't have the greatest playoffs, even though he did score that big goal that sent us to the second round. But it's like you need more from these guys, and they didn't do it. I love these guys. I love the core four, man. These guys have made this team much more watchable than years previous. And Leaf fans, you can't deny that. Like, this team is much better than it was before. And that's credit to everybody that's been here. All the different management and coaches and everything, and all the different scouts and everything. Like, it takes a whole crowd of people to make a team better. But these players are obviously the guys that are on the ice doing it. And they just didn't get it done when they needed to in that second round. Now, if we're looking at the contract situation, Austin Matthews needs a new deal coming up to July 1st. Tavares only has 2 years left. Marner, same thing, 2 years left. And then Nylander is in the same boat as Matthews with that July 1st coming up real soon, that they need to either extend these guys or it's going to become a bit of a problem, right? So when I look at this, I think Tavares, unless he takes a hometown discount, is probably not going to be on this team past the 25-26 season, right? Marner, if he gets traded, you clear up that money. Same thing with Matthews, same thing with Nylander. So it's like you have to pick and choose who you think is going to be the most valuable to this franchise, because the window can still be open if you keep 3 of those guys, right? Obviously, if you trade one of them, the window is probably still there because the Leafs will have a lot of money to work with. Because I got to check cap friendly here, but as of right now, they're saying there's a projected like $10 million in cap space. But with the LTIR, like with Muzzin and whatever else, they have like $14 million to work with. And then if they trade a guy like Matt Murray, like they're going to be pushing close to like $19 million in cap space. It's a lot of money, but you have to factor in the next contracts of Matthews and Nylander into next season. And then you're going to have to factor in 2 years the contracts of Marner and Tavares, even though I can't see Tavares getting any like massive contract. But I think people think Tavares is going to just like finish up the next couple of years putting up like 60 or 70 points and then just live with like a less than $1 million deal. That's not going to happen, guys. Like, guys who are getting like 60 points, 70 points are making like $5 million. So that's way far ahead, but Tavares is going to be with this team until the end of his contract, so we don't even really need to talk about him. I think it comes down to if Austin Matthews is willing to sign on July 1st, that's when it becomes, okay, now do you run the risk of getting rid of Marner and this team becoming worse? Or Nylander and this team becoming worse? Or do you make that trade hoping that you get maximum value back and this team kind of stays like the same type of scoring touch, but also has that grit that can bring you to the next round? But I'm seeing a lot of people talk about how they're strapped for cap space. It's not true. This year they actually do have a lot of money to work with, but it's going to be difficult to fill out that roster and get significantly better, especially if you're going to be trading one of those big name players. So this trade that they make potentially with one of these core 4 players has to be a home run. And again, I'm going to be going through every single player, and we're going to be talking about them individually about who I think is going to be traded and why they should be traded or why they shouldn't be traded. But I kind of wanted to give this as like the background and like kind of the rumors that have been going on, especially with that Shanahan phone call. So Chris Johnston reporting it. That's a pretty damn good source. So it's gonna be very difficult. So if you guys are new here, like this video and subscribe. Join the squad. I'd love to have you guys here. Sound off in the comments. Let me know what you guys think. And hopefully I'll see you guys in the next video or stream. Peace.